got the thumbs up. Okay, super. We will get started. Well, welcome everyone. We are kicking off our third year of our cardiovascular rehabilitation rounds. We're offering a hybrid format. So for our speaker, our esteemed speaker, Dr. Trine Moholdt, we have a hybrid event with both those in person and online today. For those of you that may not know, we began these rehabilitation round series about 3 years ago now, and the goal is to focus on international collaborations, international researchers to increase knowledge translation and to strengthen our collaborations in cardiovascular prevention and rehabilitation, both within and outside of the University of Ottawa Heart Institute. We are honored and delighted this afternoon to be hosting Dr. Trine Moholdt to this hybrid event. And as I mentioned, we have those in person and of course those online. For those coming to the community, come right up and grab a seat anywhere you may see fit. I'm particularly honored to be hosting her today because we met about a decade ago at our first ESC EuroPrevent meeting. Now it's ESC Preventive Cardiology, but for those that will know this name from many years ago, it's EuroPrevent. And that's where I had the first opportunity to meet her. And then I've been following her work for many, many years. So I'm excited that she's starting off this season of cardiovascular rehabilitation rounds. And her presentation nicely ties into Jump In. Every September, the University of Ottawa Heart Institute hosts Jump In, which is an event focused on promoting physical activity, promoting women's heart health, and it engages those to accumulate at least 30 minutes of physical activity every day during the month of September. So if you're a Jump In participant in person or online, welcome to our rehabilitation rounds. And without further ado, I now have the daunting task of reading Dr. Moholdt's bio. Hopefully we'll leave her some time for her actual presentation by the time I'm done reading this, but just give me a few minutes here. So Dr. Moholdt's a physiotherapist, exercise physiologist, and internationally recognized researcher in lifestyle medicine and preventive cardiology. She leads the Exercise Cardiometabolic Health and Reproduction Research Group at the Norwegian University of Science and Technology and holds an appointment at the St. Olav's University Hospital in Trondheim, Norway. And I have to say, if you have not been to Norway, it is one of the most beautiful countries in the world. Bergen is my favorite place. And I believe, Trine, this is where you were originally from, is Bergen, if I'm not mistaken. Okay, she's going to shake her head yes. If not, I've got my facts wrong. She's been continually funded as an independent researcher in the field of lifestyle interventions in cardiometabolic disease in the latter years with a special focus on reproductive aged females and their infants. Since completing her PhD in 2010, she has secured over 90 million Norwegian krone, which is equivalent to about 7.5 million euros since starting her research program. And this includes a prestigious ERC starting grant for her project entitled Exercised Breast Milk, a Kickstart for Childhood Obesity Prevention, and a Future Leader in Diabetes Award from the European Foundation for the Study of Diabetes and also funded by the Novo Nordisk Foundation. She's more than 85 peer-reviewed publications with regularly contributing to ESC, which is the European Society of Cardiology position papers, and is an invited speaker at leading international conferences. A committed mentor, she has supervised multiple PhD, postdoctoral, and master's trainees and collaborates extensively with international partners, including the Australian Catholic University. Through her translational research, Dr. Moholdt aims to improve cardiovascular health by developing effective, equitable, and evidence-based lifestyle interventions starting as early as preconception and continuing across the lifespan. So, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to her. I am very excited for this presentation. I've seen her present. She's a fantastic researcher with a wealth of knowledge in this field and has been busy these last few years building her research program. So, Dr. Moholdt, I will leave it to you to take us away here.
Thank you very much, Jennifer. I hope you still hear me.
And yes.
Yes, you do.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the very nice introduction. I'm also very excited. I wish I could be there physically, but this will do. The title of the talk is Killing Two Birds with One Stone. exercise training in the reproductive years. And here you see some photos of Trondheim, which it's correct, I'm born in Bergen, but I believe Trondheim is even more beautiful. So let's see if this works. Yes. So I will start with the presentation by showing the people who do the work. I'm often the lucky one who gets to tell about it, but I'm not the person who do the hard work that lifestyle interventions require. And here you see the great people who we have in our research group. And this slide also illustrates that we engage people from a wide range of backgrounds. And we are currently a lot of women in our group, and most of the studies we do include only female participants. Okay, sorry, I struggle a bit with the technology. So our group focuses on lifestyle intervention in reproductive age people, as this period in life is a great opportunity to kill two birds with one stone, both the parent generation and their offspring. There is a strong transmission of cardiometabolic diseases from parents to children. And mother-to-child transmission of cardiometabolic diseases cannot be explained only by shared genetics. Maternal metabolic health during pregnancy is crucial for the infant's inborn susceptibility to cardiometabolic diseases. Increased childhood obesity, early onset diabetes, and cardiovascular risk can then carry on to the next generation, leading to a vicious cycle. And after birth, postnatal nutrition adds to this and can further increase the risk. Currently, every fifth child in Europe is overweight or obese when they are 2 to 6 years old. And as they become older, the prevalence of obesity increases. And it has been estimated that more than 20% of childhood obesity is attributable to maternal obesity. And this is, of course, not an isolated problem in Europe. Obesity rates among children and youth in Canada have nearly tripled in the last 30 years. And childhood obesity is not just a medical concern. In fact, it is the top contributor to the overall cost burden across all decades of life. So our research group works towards preventing lifestyle diseases by interventions that target the first 1,000 days of life. And according to the developmental origins of health and disease hypothesis, previously known as the Barker hypothesis, the origins of lifestyle-related diseases are formed at the very beginning of life. So we therefore focus on interventions in reproductive age individuals with the aim of killing two birds with one stone. And this early lifetime window represents a period when the human body is very susceptible to epigenetic modifications. And here is one definition of epigenetic modifications. These modifications imply heritable changes in phenotype not caused by changes in the DNA or the genetic code itself. The biological mechanisms causing these changes are rather complex. But for simplicity, we can think of them as on and off switches that turn the genes on or off. Early in life, we are very sensitive for such epigenetic modifications, which can have implications for the rest of our lives and also for the next generation. So what can we then do to try to push the epigenetic modifications in the right direction? I believe, of course, that an important part of the answer is exercise. But there aren't that many studies in humans showing that maternal exercise impacts the infant's susceptibility to cardiometabolic diseases later in life. And here you see a graphical abstract summarizing a recent scientific document that we wrote on behalf of the European Association for Preventive Cardiology. And as you can see here, we call to action for more research on the impact of pregnancy-related lifestyle interventions to reduce the risk in the offspring or babies. And in this document, we summarized the evidence to date and discussed both the preconception period, pregnancy, and postpartum interventions that may help reduce the risk in the offspring. So you may have a look at this publication to see what has been done so far in this area. Sorry, my slides are a bit slow. Yeah, but it's not all about the offspring. A woman's health during pregnancy is also a window into her future cardiometabolic health. It's therefore also important for reproductive age females to exercise for their own good. Reproductive age women are, of course, advised to follow the same recommendations for physical activity and healthy eating as the rest of us. But since current guidelines are not sufficiently adhered to, we think that there is a need for alternative, feasible diet exercise strategies to help reproductive age women improve their health. So this was the background for a study, a randomized controlled trial that we called the TRA-HIT trial. And in this study, we investigated the effects of time-restricted eating and high-intensity interval training as two alternative diet exercise strategies on cardiovascular and metabolic health among reproductive age female. So this was a four-armed RCT, meaning that the participants were divided into 4 groups. And it included previously inactive women younger than 45 years old and with a body mass index of at least 27. And Camilla, who is now a postdoc in our group, did this trial during her master's training and her PhD. And what we found was that the combination of time-restricted eating and high-intensity interval training gave additive effects on several metabolic outcomes compared with the isolated effects of each intervention. And that the adherence to both the time-restricted eating and the high-intensity interval training was very good. So this study was kind of a proof of concept study with only a 7-week intervention period. Before the participants began the intervention, we recorded baseline measurements for 1 week. They were then divided into the 4 groups. The control group was asked to continue with their habitual lifestyle, and after the study period, after the 7 weeks, they were offered to undergo one of the study interventions with the same follow-up and supervision as the participants in these groups got during the trial. And we did this to limit the challenge that we often see with controlled participants changing their lifestyle on their own during the study period. And it worked quite well, as you will see when we look at the results. Not a lot of changes in the control group. The time-restricted eating involved limiting the daily window of energy intake to maximum 10 hours. We encouraged the participants to consume the last meal no later than 8 in the evening. And they could eat whatever they wanted and as much as they wanted within this eating window, and could drink non-caloric beverages outside the eating window. And then we had the high-intensity interval training, consisted of 2 weekly sessions of 4 times 4 minute HIT and 1 weekly session of 10 times 1 minute HIT. And these sessions were mostly supervised in our lab, apart from some periods when we needed to take the participants training outdoors due to the COVID restrictions. And I can tell you, the weather isn't always as nice as it was on the first photos from Trondheim on the very first slide. Despite this, the adherence to both the time-restricted eating and exercise training was very good. The participants managed to adhere to the eating window on 6.2 days per week on average, and they reduced their daily eating window with 3 hours or more. They also completed nearly all the training sessions with the intensity that was prescribed. And to the bottom right here, you see an example of a heart rate curve in one of the 4 times 4 minute HIIT sessions. There was no effect of the interventions on our primary outcome in the study, which was area under the glucose curve during an oral glucose tolerance test. But there were some other beneficial glycemic effects, including reduced nocturnal glucose and also a lower HbA1c, which is a measure of long-term glucose control in the combination group, who did both TRE and HIIT. So here you see the control group to the left on the figures, followed by TRE only, then HIT only, and then the combination group. We also saw additive effects on body composition, both for total body mass or weight, fat mass, and visceral fat. There were some tendencies of muscle mass loss in the 2 time-restricted eating groups, but less in the combination group than in the isolated time-restricted eating only group. And fitness levels, peak oxygen uptake improved in both the training groups equally in those who ate time-restricted and those who did not. And as you know, exercise and diet only work if you do it. And a lot of exercise studies have short intervention periods, and then people who participated stop exercising when the study period is finished. So in this study, we decided to contact the participants again 2 years after they finished with the study. And they were not aware of this follow-up before we contacted them. Now, of course, the delayed treatment in the control group became a challenge for us because almost everyone in that group chose to do one of the interventions. So we no longer had a pure control group. Anyway, we asked the participants how many of them had continued with time-restricted eating and or high-intensity interval training after the study period. And the green bars show the proportions of participants who were still doing TRE or HIT after 2 years. And to the left, you see that 46 of those who were randomized to time-restricted eating during the study period, or of those in the control group who chose TRE as a delayed treatment, were still eating time-restricted after 2 years. And to the right, we see that 45% of those who were randomized to HIIT or chose it as a delayed treatment were still doing HIIT after 2 years. Of course, not everyone choose to come back after 2 years, and you can always ask if there is a systematic difference between those who come back and those who choose not to. This is a bit busy, I know, but what it shows is that there were some sustained benefits among those participants who were randomized to the combination group. They still had a 3.8 kilogram lower fat mass after 2 years compared with baseline, as well as lower total body mass or weight and less visceral fat. We also asked the participants to rate high-intensity interval training and time-restricted eating compared with other diet exercise strategies they have tried. And both were rated as better than other strategies. And here you see the rating of HIT. The most common reason for doing HIT were time efficiency and the rapid improvements in fitness, whereas lack of time was the most commonly stated barrier. So encouraged by the positive results of our first trial, we wanted to do another study in which the exercise sessions were unsupervised. I think if we're going to implement diet exercise interventions for people who are overweight or have obesity, it is not sustainable that everyone comes in for supervised sessions 3 times weekly in our lab. So in this 2.0 study, we decided to only have 2 groups since the combination group showed the best effects in the first trial. We also wanted to include men in this study to check whether there are any differences between men and women. And the participants in the intervention group got only 1 supervised session, and then we followed them up by a telephone. The adherence in this study to time-restricted eating was very similar as in the first study, with a 3.3-hour reduction in the eating window and TRE on 6.2 days per week on average. However, not so surprisingly, perhaps, the adherence to exercise was lower, with only 80% of the sessions completed. The intervention group lost weight, but there was no statistically significant difference in fat mass loss, which was the primary outcome in this trial. And as you can see on the graph to the left here, we had you see one dot there who actually gained almost 5 kilograms in fat mass. So that was an outlier. Both these studies show that there is some potential for cardiometabolic benefits with the combination of TRE and HIIT. But I think we have a great challenge in translating the most efficient exercise program in the lab to real-world setting. It is required for any program that people can still adhere to it over time and that it will work for both men and women with minimal supervision. So in Camilla's postdoc project, we will look at the combination of time-restricted eating and high-intensity interval training and whether this is feasible for 1 year without close supervision. And this is the third study we're doing with this combined intervention, and we have chosen to periodize the intervention so the participants have more intense periods separated by maintenance periods to try to improve the long-term sustainability for the participants. Yeah, so this trial just started. Okay, now we are switching to pregnancy. There has been many exercise studies in pregnancy, and most of them show quite disappointing results, especially considering outcomes in the infants. And I believe that this is because the interventions are typically too little and too late. So that's the reason we decided to do a study called Before the Beginning. And in Before the Beginning, we used the same intervention, a combination of time-restricted eating and exercise. And the aim of this trial was to establish an optimal diet exercise strategy starting before conception and continuing throughout pregnancy to reduce the risk of gestational diabetes and all its associated negative consequences. In this randomized controlled trial, we included a period which most maternal interventions have missed, and which is a great opportunity for lifestyle change, namely the preconception and early pregnancy period. And we recruited 167 women with an increased risk of gestational diabetes and who were planning a pregnancy to this trial. And they underwent a lot of different tests and measurements, both before, during, and after pregnancy. We won't go into these in detail today. I will show you the intervention. In this trial, the intervention was more free living than in the first trial we did on this combined diet exercise approach. So the exercise training was mainly unsupervised, but we offered participants to come in for instructions if they hadn't exercised before or needed some guidance. The goal for the physical activity component was to obtain at least 100 PI points each week. And PI is an algorithm based on your heart rate that calculates how active you are. And you can read more about it on this webpage. I hope it still works. They have actually changed the name of this measure to activity quotient now. But this is a research-based measure showing that if you reach 100 PI points per week, you reduce your risk of premature death and cardiovascular diseases. They were also asked to limit their daily time window for energy intake to maximum 10 hours per day, at least 5 days per week. We chose not to do it every day as this intervention period was very long for some. Yeah, of course, the 9 months, but for some it took up to a year to get pregnant as well. The main paper from this before the beginning trial was actually published last week, and I'm very proud of the 2 PhD students who are shared first author on this publication. Here you see the somewhat complicated flowchart of participants. I will just point out some of the numbers here. So of the 167 participants who planned to become pregnant, 83 were randomized to the control group and 84 to the intervention group. There was no difference in the number of participants who became pregnant in the 2 groups and no statistical difference in the time to pregnancy between the groups. We had very few who were lost to follow-up or who dropped out of the study, and included 53 participants in the control group and 49 in the intervention group in the analysis of the primary outcome, which was glucose tolerance during a 2-hour oral glucose tolerance test in pregnancy week 28. For the secondary outcomes, we also included those who didn't become pregnant. The adherence to exercise in the pre-pregnancy period was quite okay, with an average of 111 PI, but with a very large inter-individual variation. And the activity increased from an average around 75 in the baseline week. But as you can see here on the dots there, there were some participants, even in the baseline week, who had a really high activity level, even if we included only those who said that they didn't exercise more than once per week. And we see that the number of PI points fell during pregnancy with an average below 100 in all trimesters. And we did not record this PI measure in the control group as it was considered like a part of the intervention. In the pre-pregnancy period, the participants in the intervention group reduced their time window of eating from around 12 hours at baseline to 9.9 hours. But again, the adherence also to the TRE component decreased during pregnancy. Only about half of the participants adhered to a 10-hour or less eating window before becoming pregnant, but then the adherence decreased to 30–40% in pregnancy. So to the results, the primary outcome measure in before the beginning was 2-hour plasma glucose concentration during this oral glucose tolerance test. And to the left here, you see that the data, for the control group in blue and the intervention group in red. And there was no statistically significant difference between the groups, and even a tendency of higher concentrations in the intervention group in gestational week 28. There was, however, a significant difference in gestational weight gain between groups, and those in the intervention group gained 2 kilos less during pregnancy. So far, we have not detected any other differences between the groups in secondary outcomes from the trial, but we have a lot of data that we haven't yet analyzed. Okay, moving on to the third line of research in our group, which is the X-Milk project. Called Exercised Breast Milk, a kickstart for childhood obesity prevention. And this is, as Jennifer mentioned, an ongoing ERC starting grant project funded by the European Union. And this is a 5-year project, and we are exactly halfway in the project period now. So in X-Milk, we target another important early life factor, namely postnatal nutrition. We hypothesize that exercise during lactation will improve breast milk composition among women who are overweight or have obesity, leading to beneficial changes in the infant's gut microbiome and epigenetic signatures, and thereby preventing childhood obesity. Our hypotheses are based on the well-known beneficial systemic effects of exercise and the great intertissue communication via signaling molecules. So exercise is good for all organs and tissues in the bodies. But only one prior randomized controlled trial published more than 30 years ago has investigated the effects of exercise on human milk composition. And this trial found no differences between groups in like crude measures of milk composition. However, thanks to advances in technology, we can now quantify a lot more of different compounds in the milk. And that's what we are going to do in the X-Milk project. So in the X-Milk, under the X-Milk umbrella, the big mama study in this project is the milkshake trial. And this is a randomized controlled trial in which we will determine the effects of 8 weeks of endurance exercise on milk composition and infant outcomes in mothers who are overweight or have obesity. And I think we have recruited 73 participants now, and I think we will have one more next week, and then we will stop inclusion of new participants. This trial is going well. We have very few dropouts and very good adherence to the program. We are also completing 2 randomized crossover studies in which we are assessing the acute effects of 2 different endurance exercise sessions on milk composition. The first one of these 2 studies is completed, and in that study, we paid no attention to the participants' BMI. In the second one, we only included women with BMI over 25. Our final study is called Fit Milk and is a cross-sectional study in which we will investigate associations between milk composition and the participants' cardiorespiratory fitness. We have only a few results from the X-Milk project so far. In the first crossover study, master student Mats Holmen showed that adiponectin concentrations in the milk increased by 20% 1 hour after high-intensity interval training. And here you see changes in adiponectin concentrations at different time points compared with the morning sample from before they came into the lab. The yellow bars show that the changes after a resting condition, the green bars after moderate intensity continuous training, and the purple bars after high intensity interval training. So adiponectin, we don't know yet what this means for the baby, but adiponectin is generally a very beneficial hormone linked to better insulin sensitivity. And in the blood, we see that it increases after a period of training, at least in some studies. So we think this is a positive finding. Rebecca Holm is a medical student on the research track, and she investigated the acute effects of exercise on milk insulin concentrations in the same study. There is a slightly different color palette here, but again showing the changes from a morning sample in each condition. Although there were no statistically significant changes at any time point after moderate or high intensity exercise, I think at least it looks like high intensity interval training may reduce this increase in insulin that you see after you have eaten, because between the 1 hour exercise or rest time point and the 4 hour time point, they all ate a standardized lunch. Okay, so some more results from the milk studies. Maëlys Lemoine is a PhD student in our group, and she has investigated changes in 2 human milk oligosaccharides, or HMOs. HMOs are complex carbohydrates in the milk that supports the baby's health. And they are probably not digested by the infant gut, but promote the growth of beneficial gut bacteria. 3-SL and 6-SL are 2 HMOs that have been implicated in infant growth and metabolism. Maëlys found, and this is also from the same acute study, she found no statistically significant effects of exercise on these 2 HMOs up to 4 hours after a single session of exercise. But there was a tendency of increased 3-SL after moderate intensity exercise, and also of increased 6-SL after high intensity exercise. And we have a separate study now in which we are trying to dig more into these HMOs using magnetic resonance, nuclear magnetic resonance technology, or NMR. These HMOs are not present in infant formula, and they are like a prime suspect for why human milk has been shown to be protective against many diseases in the infants. Finally, in the Fit Milk study, Emily Ashby, also a PhD student in the group, have looked at the associations between some compounds in the milk and the participants' peak oxygen uptake or fitness level. And here you see the results from only 29 of the participants. She has now, during the summer, included 102 or 3, I believe, and the work is going on in the lab to analyze these hormones in the milk. But at least when she had finished 29 of the participants, there were no clear associations between insulin and adiponectin with the mother's VO2 peak. Well, that's not entirely true. Actually, for insulin, there was actually a statistically significant negative association between peak oxygen uptake and insulin. But as you can see here, we have 1 dot with a very low or rather low VO2 peak and a very high insulin concentration. So that was clearly like an outlier. What we did find was that insulin concentrations in the milk were associated with several body composition measures, with larger persons having greater concentrations of insulin in their milk. But again, the different studies on the impact of various compounds in the milk and infant outcomes all show different results. So it is very difficult to navigate in this field. So we have now finished the data collection in the second acute study and have gotten the metabolomics and lipidomics data back. And Ankit and Marta, who are two postdocs in our group, who you see here, are working very hard to interpret these data. I think we have more than 400 different metabolites detected in the milk and hundreds of different lipids. So we are the next couple of years will be spent trying to interpret the biological meaning of all this. Also, the milkshake trial is in its final stage of data collection, and the last few participants will be done with the intervention in November, early December. So we will have a lot of data to analyze in the next couple of years. Yeah, I think actually that's it. Oh, 5 minutes before schedule. I hope that's okay. Lots of time for questions if you have any questions. Here you see the group celebrating the BMJ publication. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Trine. That was very interesting. I'm just going to set the stage here for the Q&A. So for those of you online that have questions, you can just type your questions into the chat, and I'm just going to relocate to another laptop to be able to read and ask them. And for those in the room, we will circulate with a mic so you can ask your questions in person. I get the opportunity to ask my question first. Okay. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good. I think it's really interesting where you've decided to focus. I mean, we've known for many years the historical underrepresentation of women in trials that focus on chronic disease management, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, obesity, overweight. So I find it so interesting that you've been able to focus in this area. Of course, there's been many trials looking at pregnancy over the years and physical activity, but you've selected two particular areas, one preconception and one, with your milk study that has not been done. This is a really interesting area. I'm actually curious from a more practical point of view, how are you finding recruitment? Because this is almost a different population that we would normally have in many of our cardiovascular disease trials.
Yeah, thank you for the question. So we struggle a bit planning a pregnancy is not something most people don't like flag that very often. So what we did in that study, we actually got permission to send out electronic invites to all habitants in and around our city who were between 22 and 35. I can't remember the exact. So we used registries. So they got an invite every so often from us, and I think that's how we reach them. But it's not a perfect strategy because some were very annoyed, and we got some really angry emails back saying that, how do you know my BMI? I don't want kids, or we have tried for 11 years for kids, stop sending me this. So it was not perfect, but at least we reached a lot of potential participants.
That's really interesting to share, and I expect that those might be some of the responses, but we always try to think about larger, systematic strategies for recruitment. So this is really helpful to hear as we kind of all try to, include women in our clinical trials, and of course EDI as a whole across clinical trial recruitment.
Yeah.
So
for the milk studies, we did not do that. We did a lot of paid advertisements on social media. Yeah, and the usual things like posters on the birth clinics, etc.
I've got some questions coming in the online chat here. I'm going to start with those, and others in person, don't be nervous to come up to the mic, or I'll bring the mic to you if you have questions. So first one coming in is a colleague who's at Toronto Rehabilitation Institute. She's thanking you for a great talk and says, for the first study, was all the HIIT done on treadmills, and were the HIIT sessions done in the fasting window?
Yes, thank you for the question. Yeah, most of the HIIT sessions were done on treadmills. But of course, when you start running, or so many of them walked uphill. But we also experienced that a lot of these participants really wanted to run. They said, oh, I haven't run in 20 years. I want to try. But then often you can get some pain in various body parts. So we also have some bikes and an elliptical trainer. So we some switched to that. We also had the outdoor period when the lab was closed. And also in that period, we allowed for some could train at work. And yeah, we had a lot of different solutions in that period, actually.
Can I ask a question about your data collection, your volume? You are clearly collecting a number of metabolites. How are you managing? What's your sample collection process? And do these samples go into a biobank? What is your process?
The samples, we have them in a project-specific biobank, but we don't have, so it's very easy with milk because you can get quite a lot. It's not like blood. So we sample, we have a big chest freezer full of milk now. So it's a project-specific biobank, but we collect more milk than we need for the pre-planned analysis. So we can do lots of things with the milk later, I think.
We have another question here that says, I may have missed this. This is from Dr. Bruce Moran, who's here at the Montfort Hospital in Ottawa. But did your study look at if exercise attenuated the insulin resistance associated with pregnancy?
Yeah, we did a lot of insulin resistance, insulin sensitivity indexes, and we didn't see any effect of the intervention. But it's, of course, a question whether, I mean, we also had some measures of physical activity in the two groups, and there was no big difference in the overall physical activity levels between the groups. So I believe that the control group also was quite motivated to do some physical activity, exercise, eat healthier, etc. So this is a very common problem for us, at least, that those randomized to the control group start doing changes as well.
Hello, my name is Jonathan. I have two questions. One is, what was your strategy, or what do you think encouraged people to do exercise? Because after 2 years, they were still like into the exercise, and you can be able to still do the follow-up and everything, which it was pretty interesting for me. And the other one is regarding the people that already had their babies. Are you gonna do a follow-up on them, like to 1, 2 years? And what type of markers are you considering to look at them?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you for the questions, Jonathan. So the first one is why did they continue for 2 years? Those who did. I think part of the answer is that they actually know that they are able to do this. They have shown and proven to themselves that it's possible. I can fit it in my schedule. And they also mentioned when we spoke to them that they actually saw improvements. They lost weight, some of them quite a lot of weight, only by eating time restricted and exercising 3 times per week. Yeah, so seeing that it actually works is a big motivator, I think. The second question, yeah, so in the milkshake trial, we invite the participants back when the baby is 9 months old. And then we do the same round of testing, VO2 max, blood pressure, blood sampling in the mothers as well. But we follow the babies for 2 years with body composition or weight and height measurements and fecal samples, because we think the mechanism for if exercised breast milk is beneficial, we think it's via the gut microbiota.
I have a question on how you're collecting the breast milk, because the breast milk kind of accumulates. So what you start with before exercise, if you wait for 2 hours, you have the breast milk that's in there before exercise, plus what's been accumulating for 2 hours after exercise. So that you kind of have a mix, right? So your snapshot of what you take 2 hours after exercise includes, if you haven't emptied before exercise, includes before and after exercise milk. And also, if when you're breastfeeding or pumping, the milk that comes out first is different than the milk that comes out at the end of your breastfeeding session. So this might contribute a lot of variability, even within one person giving you a sample, and then you have a population. So how are you adjusting for any of that?
Sorry, the sound is a bit bad here now, but I think I got your question. So in the first study, we didn't have very strict description of how much and milk they should. So they get an electric pump, each participant. In the study, we're doing or just finished with only those with BMI above 25. We set them to fully, I mean, a breast is never fully empty, but to kind of fully empty the breast, use the same breast for all the different time points. And we gave them back because some pump like 200 ml. Then we take out a little bit for us and we give it back to them. Because as you say, the first milk is different to the last milk. And also because some of they pumped at 11 o'clock and then at 12 o'clock, so it's only 1 hour difference. But this is we hope that this randomized crossover design of the study will take care of it, because it's the same in all 3 conditions, and we're comparing the exercised milk with the resting milk at the same time point for the same participant. I don't know if that made sense.
Yeah, it does.
Thank you.
Okay, Trine, I'm going to put you on the spot with our last question, and if you need help answering it, I will jump in, but I'm sure you won't need the rescue here. So we have many participants that are registered in this jump-in event that I've mentioned before. It's focused on physical activity every day, at least 30 minutes for the month of September, with a focus on the importance of women's heart health and physical activity in women's heart health. So the question from one of our audience members, who's the head of our foundations, is indicating that this is so important what you've just presented for our younger demographic, which is often those we don't have in our trials. But the question also becomes the older demographic, those that are going through perimenopause, postmenopause status, what's the value of physical activity for them as a whole? So I don't know if you want to be able to summarize a field of research.
Oh, that's not exactly my field of research, but I believe that, and you can please jump in, but I believe that exercise is important no matter when. Yeah.
I think it's straddling the kind of both sides of the age spectrum here, where we've got a lot of data for years has been collected showing the benefits of physical activity in preventing and managing cardiovascular disease, from weight management aspects to blood glucose control to risks of future events, and the list, cardiovascular events, and the list can go on and on. And where Trine is really focusing is an area that's not been well studied for many years, and that's the novelty and innovation of this work. But where we also have clear gaps in our research and our literature is those during the perimenopausal, postmenopausal, and later stages. So this is actually a perfect segue, if there are no more questions within the audience and online, is after the presentation today, we've set up some tables. So for those that would like to learn more about research that we're doing with regards to women's health, you can come to these tables. We're beta testing this event just to see if this is a great place for people to come to these presentations and then learn more about the trials that we're actively recruiting for, whether they're interested in being patient partners or becoming part of the trials that we're currently offering. So I think it's safe to say, no matter what age you are, if you are a woman, whether you are at the preconception stage or you are postmenopausal, there is a large gap in the literature regarding the role of prevention rehabilitation when it comes to cardiovascular disease. Okay, so that kind of aligns with killing two birds with one stone, two investigators to respond to one good question.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much on behalf of the Division of Prevention and Rehabilitation, and of course the University of Ottawa Heart Institute. It's been an honor to host you today and learn about some of the really exciting work that you're doing. And for those that travel to EuroPrevent or ESC Preventive Cardiology, this just gives us another opportunity to speak with you and find out how your trials are doing in the springtime.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, have a great evening. She's a few hours ahead in Norway, so we will hope that she has a great rest of her night.
Thank you. Enjoy your day. Bye.